3, 2, we're live.
Okay, so thanks, Karen, and good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation Board of Directors meeting. Today is Wednesday, July the 8th. My name is Fareed Amin, and I have the distinct privilege of chairing this committee. Let me preface the formal agenda by thanking staff for all the work that was done in preparation for this meeting. I also want to thank my colleagues who have taken time from their schedule to join the meeting, my fellow directors, and also thank those of you who are joining us via the website or via the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation YouTube channel. I'd like to acknowledge that July is Disability Pride Month, which honors the identities, culture, and contributions of the roughly 6.2 million Canadians living with disabilities. Last week, as many of you know, we celebrated Canada Day, and this week, July the 11th, marks the Responsible Personal Accessibility in Toronto Housing, popularly known as RPATH, anniversary. This organization has been operating now for 13 years. Next week, July the 14th, is International Non-Binary Peoples Day. July the 16th, International Drag Day, and July the 18th, Nelson Mandela Day. We have a few items on our public agenda, which is being brought forward today. And we've got 5 consent agenda items. And these items were brought forward at previous meeting of the Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation. Should a board member wish to hold or discuss any of the consent agenda items, please do so when we get to the approval of the public agenda. We will go in camera for a portion of the meeting, and then we'll return to the public realm. I see Denise has joined us. So Denise, welcome. I'll now proceed with our land and African ancestral acknowledgements. Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation recognizes that we live and work on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat nations, and that this area is now home to a diverse population of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We recognize that Toronto is situated within the traditional territories governed by the Dish, with One Spoon Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations, the Two-Row Wampum Treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Dutch, as well as Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties involving the Anishinaabe and the Crown. These agreements remain in effect today, underscoring our shared responsibility as treaty people. The Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation has benefited from these treaties and the resources of this land by providing essential housing services to seniors in Toronto. We are dedicated to furthering reconciliation initiatives, which include facilitating staff education on the historical and ongoing impacts of policies affecting Indigenous peoples. This encompasses topics such as the Indian Act, the residential schools, treaty violations, and the continued crisis surrounding missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Now for the African ancestral acknowledgement, Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation acknowledges the racism and injustices by individuals who were brought to this land involuntarily, particularly those affected by the transatlantic slave trade. We acknowledge the experience of Black peoples who arrived in Canada seeking a better life following the abolition of slavery by the British in 1834, while also recognizing the structural, systemic, and individual racism that they have encountered, which continues to persist today. This racism culminated in the tragic destruction of Africville, which was once the largest settlement of the Black community in Canada. Toronto Seniors Housing Corporation is committed to recognizing all forms of racism, especially anti-Black racism, and is actively working to combat these injustices. We will now move to item number 3, new business and approval of the public meeting agenda. Are there any new business, any amendment, or any holes to the public agenda? Seeing none, may I have someone move the July 8th, 2026 board public agenda be approved as presented?
Linda Jackson has her hand raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, moved by Just, seconded by Linda. All in favor? That is approved. With all in favor, be it resolved that July 8th, 2026 board's public meeting agenda is approved as presented. We will now move to item number 4, conflict of interest declaration. Is there anyone who has a conflict with any of the item on the agenda today? Okay, seeing none, if something were to arise during the course of our deliberations, please identify it and we will try and deal with it at that time. Hearing no conflict, we will now move to item number 5, which is approval of the board public session minutes of April 28, 2026. Are there any amendments to the minutes? Hearing none, may I have someone move that the board public session minutes be approved as presented? Don't all speak at once.
Jim
Moved
makes
by,
how does
moved by Linda, seconded by Jim. All in favor? That is approved. Be it resolved that the public board session minutes of April the 28th is approved as presented. We'll now proceed to the approval of the closed session minutes of April the 28th, 2026. Are there any amendments to the closed session minutes? Okay, seeing none, may I have someone move that the closed session minutes be approved as presented? Put your hands up or I'll name you.
Jess, Jim, and Linda have their hand up, Ms.
Okay, so
Chair.
moved by Jim, seconded by Linda. All in favor? That is approved. With all in favor, be it resolved that the board closed session minutes of April 28, 2026 is approved as presented. We will now move to item number 7, which is a review of the action item list. Does anyone have any comments, any considerations on the action item list? Okay, Jess, go ahead, my friend. You're mute.
Not usually. Anyway, there's a presentation by Bill Lohman, and I'm wondering how that becomes an action item, and the request that STAC members be involved in collecting information from all buildings.
Good question. Thank you, Jess. I'll ask Mr. CEO or one of or a member of the leadership team to comment on that.
Yes, through the chair to the board, Deanna is going to speak to this one.
Thanks, Tom, and Fareed, and Jess, through the chair to the board. So Jess, as you know, the conversation we had at STAC on July 18th, the next step that we have taken forward with the STAC group is to establish a subcommittee to design this approach. The branding has been STAC Roadshow. I don't think that's where it's going to end up, but that's what we've been calling it so far, as you know. So I know those are the next steps that we've agreed on. So I hope that's helpful, and it's good to let the board know that we're taking those next steps. Thank you for raising it.
All right. Thanks, Deanna. Thanks again, Jess. There are no other consideration on this particular item. We'll move on to item number 8, which is the CEO report. Mr. Hunter, over to you, sir.
Great. Just, thank you, Fareed, and good afternoon, and through the chair to the members of the board. I would like to provide a few updates on matters currently impacting Toronto seniors housing, including a reflection on June recognition activities, the start of the 2027 budget process, and also at the request of board members, a update on the LA Center for Seniors, the Food for Now program operating near Woods Manor, and the recent fire at 1420 Victoria Park. In terms of the June events, I would like to begin by reflecting on several important occasions we recognized throughout Toronto seniors. June brought together National Indigenous History Month, Filipino Heritage Month, Pride Month, and Seniors Month. It also marked Toronto Seniors' 4th anniversary, and together these provided opportunities to celebrate the diversity of our communities, recognize the experience of our tenants and staff, and strengthen connections across the organization and the community. For Pride Month, Toronto Seniors Housing partnered with Toronto Community Housing to host a joint Pride party on June 28th here at 423. The event brought together staff from both organizations, and they celebrated not only the parade, but inclusion, building relationships, and demonstrating our shared commitment. And also throughout Filipino Heritage Month, we highlighted the stories and experiences of Filipino staff members across Toronto Seniors Housing. I think it was one from each one of our region, recognizing their contributions and the important role they play in supporting our tenants through their work and the community. And then, as part of National Indigenous History Month, we were honored to welcome Elder Blue Waters for a lunch and learn session. And Elder Blue Waters shared teachings on the role and significance of elders in the Indigenous communities, offering valued perspectives grounded in culture, lived experience, and community connection. Their participation created an important opportunity for staff around learning, reflection, and dialogue. And I was present, and there was really a very interactive session. June was also Seniors Month, and in recognition of both Seniors Month and our 4th anniversary, we shared a series of tenant stories, attended from each one of the regions, and it highlighted the many ways the residents contribute through their friendships, volunteerism, creativity, their resilience, and mutual support. And they also reinforce the importance of service and programs that help seniors remain connected in aging at home. And as we look back on June, it's incredible, June already, I want to thank everyone who participated and supported these activities. And they showcase the people, their experiences and relationships that really reflect the values and guide the Toronto Seniors Housing work. Next, with the 2027 budget, it is once again we're focused on and getting kind of positioned for our work and already underway under our 2027 budget. And this really, as you know, is a significant lift and focus for the for our organization, for the city, and just wanting to kind of highlight that in my comments today. And as with previous years, the budget timeline and the process are established by the City of Toronto, and our agencies, organizations such as Toronto Seniors are to work within those parameters. And as you know, our budgeting process is closely connected to Toronto Community Housing, and so that also plays in our work as well. And we're in the early stages of this work, and we'll continue to assess operation requirements, risk, priorities, and opportunities for efficiency as the budget is developed. There is an item on the agenda for this specifically, so I won't provide any more detail, but both myself and Vince will provide kind of further insight around the 2027 budget. Then moving on into more of the kind of the partnership aspects and activities. One was with the LA Center for Seniors. And just kind of with respect to this organization, confirming that they did vacate 55 Rankin as planned on June 26th. And since that time, our focus has been on supporting the tenants through the transition, maintaining our community connections, and ensuring continuity of programming and services within the building. I'm glad to share that through a combination of new and existing community partners, programming levels have been maintained, and tenants continue to have access to activities and services which are comparable to those available prior to the transition. To support this period of change, Toronto Seniors has increased the staff presence at the property, replaced equipment and supplies that were removed from LA Center, and continue to work closely with both the City of Toronto and Councillor Bravo's office has also been very closely linked to this transition. And speaking to Councillor Bravo, yesterday she facilitated a tenant meeting to hear directly from the residents regarding this transition and future programming needs. Our staff were also have hosted a community barbecue, providing an opportunity to reconnect with tenants, gather feedback, and reinforce our commitment to supporting the community during this transition. And while it does remain ongoing, our assessment to date is that the tenants continue to have access program supports. There has been kind of disappointment with certain kind of tenants who had a strong affiliation with LA Center that they're no longer present, but we really are working to kind of maintain that stability within the building. A bit of an update on the food for now, and this is the program, the initiative, the food security program that has operated outside of Woods Manor. And from what we kind of know in our records, there have been no notable security incidents on the Toronto Seniors Housing property associated with the program and its clients. While the program, as we know, operates outside of Toronto Seniors Housing's direct control, we want to remain focused on the measures within our control to support the tenant safety and the security. Many of our tenants access this program, this food program, so we just want to make sure that it's very balanced for both our tenants and the community the individuals in the community who receive the food security. So this and for us, it maintains our camera systems, ensuring access controls remain effective, and continuing our collaboration with the community safety unit and neighborhood police partners. And our priority remains ensuring tenants feel safe and secure in their homes, and also helping to meet needs of the community. And then just finally on the 1420 Victoria Park fire. And as the board members are aware, this incident resulted in the tragic loss of a resident's life. And just wanting to pause to kind of reflect on that loss of the tenant, and knowing showing our sincere condolences to the residents, family, friends, and neighbors who have been impacted by this loss. And I did want to just share with the board at this meeting just a comment that our regional operation manager, Michelle Davis, made regarding this incident, and in terms of kind of the staff's commitment and the support to the tenant and the tenants around and the family. And just saying that this was part of the message that went out to staff. There's a quiet kind of, and this is Michelle's part of her comments. There's a quiet kind of leadership that rarely makes the incident report. It's found in the records that are already up to date before they're requested. It's found in the key that's exactly where it should be. It's found in the calm voice that answers the phone at 3 a.m. It's found in the person who walks one more floor, knocks on one more door, or makes one more call because someone else is depending on them. Yesterday at 1420 Victoria Park, I had the privilege of watching that kind of leadership unfold. While the circumstances were tragic, the response reflected something much bigger than a single day. It reflected preparation, trust, professionalism, and genuine care for our tenants. And just think it really it was a tragic event, but really the staff and tenants did their ultimate best to respond and to support. And also, there is a time, a section set aside of the in-camera if there is any more specific questions relative to those incidents. Thank you. That's my update.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And I also want to echo some of the sentiments you expressed. On behalf of the entire board, we do express our sincere condolences to the families who are impacted by the tragedy, and our thoughts and prayers continue to be with them. But I also want to take a moment and have this as part of my postscript after your presentation is to thank staff. I think the summary that you provided sums up the quiet work that our staff and the team does day in and day out. And I just want to acknowledge that despite some of the high profile, high impactful, and perhaps difficult situations that staff found themselves in over the last several months. And I think though what we see publicly perhaps happens unnoticed almost on a daily basis, perhaps not at that level, but incidents like this is not uncommon for staff to have to deal with on a daily basis. So I want to acknowledge the staff dedication and commitment, and I want to thank them. And again, I want to also tell our seniors that we'll continue to do whatever we can to ensure that we live up to their expectations and continue to allow them to age in dignity. And I want to echo those words, and I also want to say, we feel your pain, and we're going to do everything we can to try and ensure that you continue to receive the best service that you can from us and the rest of the team. Are there any questions for Tom? As Tom said, on the LA Center issue, some of that, if there are questions, can be addressed during the in-camera session, but if there are other questions appropriate for this public realm, this is your opportunity. All right. Seeing none. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate your report, and thank you for continuing to provide the leadership to the rest of the team. So we'll now move to item number 9, which is the Audit, Finance, and Risk Committee report. I know that Costa is cannot be with us today, but Lawrence will assume his old job back and provide us with an update on the deliberations of that committee. Over to you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. I'm Lawrence D'Souza, Vice Chair of the Audit, Finance, and Risk Committee. I will be giving today's update on behalf of the committee chair, Costa Costaros. At our last meeting held on June 3rd, 2026, we went through biannual procurement report, Q1 and April 2026 financial results, enterprise risk management reporting, Q1 reconciliation, and procurement change order, which is being brought forward today for the board's approval. Our committee's next meeting will be held on October 1st, 2026. That is our update for today. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Lawrence. Appreciate you pinch hitting for Costas, and thanks again for the work that this committee continues to do. This is an important committee, and we look to you and your team for the best advice on audit, finance, and assessment of risk. So we'll now move to item number 9. Item number I think there is a there's an item here, Vince, which is the procurement change order that has to be addressed. And as many of you know, procurement item that exceeds 20% of the original cost requires board approval. So I'll hand it over to you, Vince, for any comment or deliberations that you want to provide to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the board and board committee members. Attached, you will find for approval for Medivie Blue Cross in the amount of $1.580 million up to December 31st of 2026. The initial 3-year term started from 2024 to 2026 was completed in assistance with Hub International. The estimated included assumptions for annual cost escalation, inflation, and also service costs. However, the estimate was based on the 2023 staffing levels, and factors were not included increase in headcount and reconciliations of the administrative services only, ASO health and dental accounts, and plan improvements that included both the collective agreement and also with modest improvements as well. So these shortfall is included in the annual budget and forecast, and this will be absorbed in 2026. And so this item here is up for approval.
Thanks a lot, Vince. And before we get into any questions, I just want to recognize that Councillor Crisanti has joined us, and I want to welcome him to our meeting. And of course, Denise is here as well. I don't think Denise heard me the first time. But, Denise, welcome. Always good to see both of you. The city is well represented.
Hi, Fareed. Thank you for that. Can I just ask a quick question to Vince?
Sure. Go ahead.
So, Vince, on the procurement change order, just one question. What is the threshold for that change order? Is there a staff delegated number, and then beyond that, it needs to get approval?
It's 20%.
Yeah. So through the chair and Fareed was just mentioning, there either 20% or $250,000. That is at the threshold.
So I didn't hear that. 250,000.
Yeah, or 20%.
Authority?
Correct.
And
So I think there are two thresholds, Councillor. One is if it exceeds 250,000 or 20%.
Got it. Okay.
Of the original value.
Yeah.
Right. Very good. Thank you. That was it. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other questions for Vince before we? Okay. If not, may I have a mover and a seconder for this item? Okay. Moved by Councillor Crisanti, seconded by Jim. All in favor? That is approved. So with that approval, if you can bring the motion back up, Karen. Okay, so with that, the board approve and award the following change order in which the cumulative change order value exceeds 20% of the original commitment value of the contract to Mediview Blue Cross, increase the authorized spending limit for group benefits, health, dental, and insurance for the period of July the 1st, 2026 to December 31st, 2026 in the amount of 1,580,000. That motion was moved by Councillor Crisanti, seconded by Jim. They were a unanimous approval, so that motion is approved. All right, so we'll now move to item number 7B, which is the 2027 budget timeline. Vince, over to you again.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start, just wanted to pass back to Tom if he wants to add anything more from what he had earlier. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, Vince, and through the chair to the board. I just wanted to provide, I guess, a bit more context around this particular item, and many for new board members, and just a reminder of the kind of the environment and the context around the budget planning for Toronto seniors housing. And I think first of all, just making a kind of a high comment overall comment how this budget process is for us is so driven by the city. And Vince will go into more around their timelines and priorities. But even when we receive the information around the budget process, there's things such as like an economic factor sheet that the city provides to us with, as you know, what would be some of the labor contract rates, and also as it relates to expenditures that we make, there are very kind of specific increases that are allocated to this. So those economic factors, much of that is set by the city. Also, just want to kind of impress that the relationship that we have with Toronto Community Housing in our work and in the budget process, almost 2/3 of our budget, those costs are driven by TSHC. So that's really a key element within our budgeting process, and reminding that has a significant impact on our final budget for 2027. And also, you will see what's attached in the package, the kind of the letter from the mayor, which outlines the kind of priorities and the details, and those three priorities that you can see, those we will speak to, and has been requested in previous years from the board, how Toronto Seniors Housing is specifically addressing each one of those priorities. And you'll see that information leading up to and at the special session that we're having for our board on September 8th, prior to the submission of the budget to the city. And also just within Toronto Seniors Housing and in our budget process, it is important for us that we have that consultation with staff, with tenants, and with the board, and you will see that as well reflected in the schedule that Vince will be going through. So I just wanted to provide some of those kind of overall comments in terms of the context in which this budget will be prepared. So Vince, over to you. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so as Tom alluded earlier, the key thing here, the key dates for us is that September 23rd will be our due date, first draft submission to the City of Toronto. As Tom also mentioned as well, there is a letter that the mayor has sent out for the direction letter for 2027. In there, she states really the continued mandate, which is to maintaining a strong focus on service to our tenants, supporting, essentially long-term financial sustainability, and of course, certainly looking for efficiencies and improvement on savings as well. The city has directed us to sort of provide us with a zero net increase from 2026 operating budget increase, certainly while recognizing existing services and operational requirements that has been negotiated or has been discussed with the city. And on top of it as well, we will be working very closely with TSHC and also with the city in drafting scenarios in the coming weeks. And that would give us a little bit more an idea what that come out to be. So that for now, that's sort of the key things there. And then you will see attached as well some key dates throughout the process, both internally at TSHC and also through the city process as well. And certainly we will keep the board and FRC updated of any key budget matters. And certainly finally is that the board is expected to provide an approval of the 2027 budget on December 15th of 2026. So that is sort of the overall timeline. If you have any questions there, I'll take the questions now.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and thanks, Vince. And before we get into Q&A, I just want to remind directors that the timelines and processes are actually established by the City of Toronto. So I don't think we've got too much flexibility there. The guidelines are given to us, and we'll do our best to try and ensure that we comply with the directives provided by the city. Other comment I would make is a comment that Tom made, which is about the control that we might have, because our budget, as you know, is also tied to what's happening with the Toronto Community Housing Corporation. But over the last several years, I think we have managed to work through that partnership well. And I also want to publicly thank the Toronto Community Housing Corporation for their support as we sort of find our feet and begin to do the things that we need to do to enhance our status as the corporation responsible for seniors housing in Toronto. Okay, so with that, Jess, go ahead, please.
Yes, to the chair and the board. I'm interested to know how this 0% is workable, given the new hires and the commitment to pay increases for many staff. I realize that this is only a portion of the budget, but given the fact that the city is basically flatlining its subsidy, this essentially becomes a diminution of services available to tenants in order to meet these goals. That's how I view it. I'm hoping that isn't the case.
And to the chair, maybe I can answer that question there. So as it relates to the commitments from a salary increases perspective wise, those are commitments that the city has already acknowledged. So therefore, that is protected from that perspective. When we mention about the zero budget increase from 2026 approved operating budget, that means that all the levels in terms of regular non-salary related is going to be status quo. As it relates to additional headcounts and additional services and enhancements, those are the types of conversations we will have with the city and TSHC in the coming weeks, leading towards the final submission, the first submission on this September 23rd. So it is a challenging budget, as Tom and the board chair has noted as well. Certainly on our perspective wise, we anticipate that we will work very closely with the department heads in trying to find efficiencies in places, and also looking to offset some of the increases. Like I said earlier as well, anything to do with salaries and benefits, that is protected from that perspective, and we will have that further conversations and discussions with the city on those scenarios. We will anticipate there will be, a deficit position, given the fact that, we will not be able to find X or Y amount of efficiencies to offset all of that. So stay tuned, more to come, but certainly we will work very closely with the leadership team, along with the tenants and the staff committee, and also through the board as well.
Yeah, and I think we'll have an opportunity to examine in more detail in the meetings that are coming up, and we'll make sure that we do our due diligence. But I think it's a noteworthy exercise to continue to try and drive efficiencies, and if we can, to try and ensure that we're not necessarily cutting frontline services. But that's the task of the leadership team to bring forward to the board, and I'm sure the board will do its due diligence to ensure that we continue to provide a level of service that is acceptable and deserving. So stay tuned, I guess, is the best way to put it. And I know, Tom, you and your team and Vince would be hard at work trying to put this together. I know the city also has a bigger task, and I'm sure Denise and Andrea and folks would also be busy working through some of this, but we'll do our best to try and ensure that we preserve services while at the same time drive whatever efficiencies we can within the organization, because I think that is what the public expects from us, is to continue to look for ways of ensuring that we can spend money in a responsible and responsive way. Right. I don't see any additional hands up, so I assume that there are no other comments. But like I said, we'll have an opportunity to deliberate on this in the coming months. All right. I'm not sure if Brenda has joined us, Karen, but we're now on item number 10, which is the Corporate Governance and Human Resources Committee report. If Brenda is on the line, Brenda can
Correct,
provide.
Mr. Chair. Brenda has not joined us of yet, just having difficulties joining by phone. However,
right.
Grant Coffey can give the CGHRC update.
Okay, Grant, over to you.
Thank you, Fareed, and good afternoon, everybody. At Toronto Seniors Housing Corporate Governance and Human Resources Committee, it was held yesterday on July the 7th. We went through the following topics. There was an update on the People and Culture Dashboard. There was an update on the IDEA Strategy Work Plan and discussion on some of the activities going on over the upcoming periods. There was also an item on the TSHC Policy Work Plan where we provided an update on some accomplishments, some policy work this year, and plan for next year. And finally, there was a Board Governance Work Plan update, which was approved by the committee and will be brought forward to the next Board of Directors meeting in September to be adopted. There are no items being brought forward at today's board meeting, and the next CGHRC meeting will be held on Wednesday, August the 26th at 3 p.m. And that's the update on that item for today. On behalf of Brenda.
Thank you very much, Grant. Are there any questions arising from that update? Right, seeing none, we'll now move on to our Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee, which is item number 11. And Ms. Jackson, over to you.
Yes, thank you to the chair and to the committee. Good afternoon. Since our last Toronto Seniors Housing Board of Directors meeting, we have had two fulsome Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee meetings. The first was held on May 19th, where we discussed the operational dashboard for a QTEC, a pest management report and work plan, a community safety strategy, and the Community Safety Unit's Q1 2026 report. And we also had a fulsome discussion and update on the community programs and partnerships. The next, we had a lot of agenda items, so we actually added another meeting in. The next Quality and Tenant Engagement meeting was held on June 1st, where our board chair kindly stepped in for me at the last minute to chair the meeting on my behalf. At that meeting, and I have reviewed, there was a whole fulsome discussion on our tenant experience survey results, future strategic directions, and the integrated service model annual report. And I believe to allow for the fulsome discussion that was required at that meeting, there were some items on the agenda that were deferred but will be brought forward. That being innovation research update, which will come to our next QTEC Quality Tenant Engagement Committee meeting next month. Our Q1 TSHC annual plan progress update, which was brought forward as a consent agenda at today's Board of Directors meeting, and the seniors acknowledgement, which will come to our next Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee meeting. I'm looking forward to that discussion. With that, I note that our next Toronto Seniors Housing Quality and Tenant Engagement meeting is scheduled for Monday, August 17th at 3 o'clock. And I would just like to once again thank Fareed and my fellow board members for your support when I was unable to attend and due to a family issue. So thank you. And we do have one agenda item to come forward on strategic direction. Do you want to add anything, Mr. Chair, from that meeting?
No, just to say that I wasn't as efficient as you are, the chair, so we had to defer some items.
Yeah, they always throw me a challenge, believe me. And I push back.
Anyway, no, thanks. That was a good debrief, and quite a busy workload on that committee as usual. So thanks, Linda. Thanks, and again, our thoughts and prayers as you go through your personal circumstances.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions for Linda on the QTEC? reports? Okay. If there nothing else, we will now move into our closed meeting. So what I need is
Pardon me,
someone.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, we do have a
Yes,
public presentation from the Beam Group first.
there you go. All right. So before we move into closed session, we have a presentation from the Beam Group. So I will hand it over to, I don't know, Grant or Tom to introduce our colleagues and take it away.
Thank you. Thanks, Fareed. And through the chair, I'll just do a brief introduction on this report and then turn it over to Beam to walk us through some material. So as the board is aware, as part of the work to renew TSHC strategic directions, Beam has been supporting a series of consultation sessions and exercise to inform the future strategic direction and gather input from a number of different perspectives. Beam is with us today to provide a summary presentation of that report, which has just been put up on the screen, and I'll turn it over to them in a minute. This particular presentation is supported by a more detailed report that is also an attachment to the staff report. So that is with the package for your review and consideration. As is noted in the staff report, we'll be looking to use this work to inform the next set of strategic directions that will ultimately be drafted and come forward to the Quality and Tenant Engagement Committee in September, and then we're looking at board in October. In this next segment, for the first portion, Beam is going to present the slides. So we expect that to take about 15 minutes, and that'll be followed by a segment in the public realm here for questions from the board and a few discussion points that Beam will facilitate some conversation with you about for about 20 minutes. And then we will move in camera. When we move in camera, we'll be looking at some more specific conversation with the board about how to apply potentially these findings into the future strategic directions. With that, I'll turn it over to Jarrett Myers, principal at the Beam Group, to walk us through this. He also can introduce a couple of, I think he has 3 other team members here today with him, with Beam, all who've been working very collaboratively with our team at TSHC on this effort. And over to you, Jarrett.
Great, thanks, Grant. So great to be with you folks. As Grant mentioned, my name's Jarrett. I think we've met at the previous meeting where we had a consultation session, and I'm joined by my colleagues Tasnia Reza and Lily Clark. And what we were hopefully everybody can see the screen okay, but I think the material was also circulated. So if it's easier to kind of follow along with that, please do. And as Grant mentioned, we wanted to spend about 15 minutes or so giving you folks an overview of the engagement approach, key findings, both what's working well and what could be improved, and kind of look at where we're going next. And then we want to spend about 20 minutes or so getting your feedback. And then I understand we'll move in camera to get some more detailed feedback on a series of discussion questions we have. And so I'll kind of continue going through this material, but if there are any questions at any point, if it's easier just to kind of stop me and ask any questions, please do. We want to make sure that we use this time to best effect for you folks, and want to make sure that you folks are comfortable with the direction that we're heading with the strategic directions process. So in terms of the engagement activities, as our mandate has been, we've held a very comprehensive approach to stakeholder engagement, in addition to a series of interviews, a staff survey, virtual consultations with partner organizations, a number of workshops with the leadership team and the executive leadership team. You folks have been part of a consultation session, and several staff focus groups. And we've also held a number of tenant engagements, which include both through the stack and also pop-ups. So we attended a number of buildings to get feedback from tenants directly, using a variety of consultation techniques. And we've met with TCHC in the City of Toronto as well. So well over 600 people participated in the various engagements, and lots of really rich feedback, both in terms of what's working well and also opportunities for improvement. We one of the areas that we looked at is the existing vision, mandate, and commitment, and the existing values, the objectives, and enablers. And part of what we're, of course, doing with the Strategic Directions Initiative is to do a little bit of a bottom up to hear about what are the challenges, what's working well, and what could be improved, but also kind of test and refine the existing vision, mandate, commitment, values, objectives, and enablers. So, one of the things we heard quite clearly is that there was a lot of support for the existing vision, mandate, and commitment. So, stakeholders kind of reported that we're kind of heading in the right direction. We could go further. Um, one big area has been around aging at home and the various boundaries associated with that. So the role that TSHC plays in supporting tenants to age at home, something that we'll dig into a bit further with you folks. Safety was also a key issue that was identified. The interest in ensuring that community belonging and tenant voice remains central to the delivery of TSHC's services, and ensuring that staff are well supported through this. The We've got a few slides to kind of get through, so I'm going to go relatively quickly and want to make sure that we dedicate most of our time, but to hearing from you folks. But we can come back to any of this material. Just want to be conscious of the time we have here. So we did hear that as an organization, TSHC has been maturing over the last few years. That the seniors focused mandate is really important to the success of the organization itself. That there's a really strong commitment from staff, and tenants really appreciate the hard work and the dedication that staff have to ensuring not only on kind of the landlord aspect, but also the integrated and wraparound services that TSHC provides. So that was seen as a key strength. The opportunities for tenant engagement through programs like Community Connect, tenant circles, the various stack connections, that was seen as a really positive a real strength of TSHC's programs. And then, of course, the integrated services model. And in one of the final consultations we held, one of the tenants talked about the fact that the various wraparound services that TSHC provides is as important as the actually providing a unit to live in. And so that integrated service model came up time and again about being a real differentiator for TSHC services, and something that tenants really value. We also heard, and partly in conversations with you folks, is just around the sector voice that TSHC can bring, and so sometimes characterized as providing more of an advocacy role, but basically being able to shape whether it's policy or potentially funding discussions. All of the expertise that TSHC brings can help shape with some of those policy changes going forward. In terms of some of the challenges, so we did hear a lot about the fact that with aging at home and the reality that tenants are getting older, there's an increasing level of complexity of tenants that reside within TSHC buildings. And that's putting additional strain on the way that services are being delivered. We heard a fair bit from tenants around safety and security concerns. And so, whether that had to do with unauthorized building access, tenant takeovers, antisocial behavior, that's very much top of mind for tenants, and an opportunity to address some of those concerns as part of the implementation of the strategic plan going forward. Um, We did hear some challenges around communications gaps. So in some cases, tenants reported that queries weren't being responded to, or it was unclear what was happening with various building works. And there, again, is an opportunity there for strengthening communication. Maintenance and contractor accountability was also top of mind for many tenants. So whether it had to do with elevator issues or repairs, pest management, uh, uh, we heard throughout some of the consultations that strengthening accountability around maintenance and contractor work could be improved. And then kind of going, I think, hand in hand with the reality that tenant needs are growing more complex, the importance of ensuring that buildings are accessible and looking at ways to reduce some of the accessibility barriers that tenants are facing. That is also something that is a potential area for improvement. And then finally, we heard a lot about staff capacity and strengthening clarity around the role of TSHC and the role that staff members have. So, in order to continue to provide the important services that staff deliver to tenants, there's an opportunity to strengthen capacity for staff, and that could look like documenting career pathways, strengthening training, looking at various staffing levels. But that aspect of staff capacity was also seen as something that could be strengthened. Um, this slide essentially lays out the existing strategic directions. So as I mentioned, there was a lot of support for the vision, mandate, commitment, values, and what we did find is that there is an opportunity for augmenting some of the values. And so as an example of that, when we talked to folks about innovation, there was a lot of support for the concept, but putting it into practice and elevating it to a value was something that we're looking at to consider whether it should be a value or whether it should be something that is part of the way that services are being delivered. The integrated service model, taking that to the next level, is another opportunity for improving the way that services are delivered. We talked a little bit about staff capacity, some of the challenges regarding constraints on resources, and when we're looking at security and accessibility issues, how that can be handled. Continuing to strengthen the way that tenants are engaged in decision making and supporting tenants to age at home, using data to continue to refine and implement the strategy, and looking at ways in which TSHC can be positioned as providing greater leadership in seniors housing more broadly. Or several of the potential opportunities arising from that stakeholder consultation process. And what we're, as Grant mentioned, what we're looking at doing over the next number of weeks is to build out the refinements of the strategic direction. So I'll just again kind of go back to the current strategic directions. So looking at, again, not wholesale change, but strengthening the strategic directions, looking at how the vision, mandate, commitment can evolve based on some of the feedback that was provided, as well as the values, and building out a series of objectives and enablers with supporting projects and initiatives to help to realize that vision. And I think what we wanted to do, and again, wanted to use this time to best effect. I apologize, that was a little bit of a tour de force, just going through a lot of very extensive consultations. So happy to kind of elaborate on anything that was raised in the last few slides here. But we did have a few specific areas that we wanted to get input on, and then I understand we'll be moving to an in-camera portion for further and deeper discussion of the strategic directions. So the three broad areas, based on what we talked about, whether these themes and findings reflect your experience and awareness of in terms of what you're hearing, the various tenant priorities that have been raised. So aging at home, safety, communication, accessibility, social connection, any feedback you may have on those elements and where which may be most important in the plan, and also aging at home in terms of looking at how we can be realistic about how TSHC delivers and works with its partners. So those are a number of questions that we would appreciate any input on, but also, any thoughts or feedback you have on the findings from the consultation process as we inform the next phase of the work would be very much appreciated.
All right, thanks. Questions, comments, feedback?
Yeah, I have my hand up. It's
Yeah,
Jess.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
To the chair and the board, in the background information, there seems to be a number of pilot projects which are hopefully going to be expanded to a larger client base. Certainly, there appears to be better engagement and more fulsome participation by residents in areas where these are available, particularly the Northwest. In the Southeast, these opportunities don't seem to be as many or as fulsome as they are in other areas. So the responses are, by and large, lower in the Southeast area, which I believe indicates that there is a lack of engagement because of a lack of opportunities. Is this your finding as well?
Yeah, so one of the things we did when in looking at the data and also conducting a lot of the stakeholder consultation, that there does appear to be some variation across the 84 or so buildings that TSHC has, and also across the 4 regions as well, as you point out. So we didn't sort of get into a great deal of analysis around specific pilot projects, but I think the broad theme that there may be an opportunity to look at ways to support within the Southeast region, but also within specific buildings, ensuring that there's a greater degree of consistency and standardization in the delivery of services, including various programs, is something that we have identified, and what was one of the themes that were arising from the research process.
Thank you. My second question, if I can jump ahead, is that all of the research seems to be fairly heavily staff related in terms of the consultation process. Certainly the surveys that were sent out to the tenants, there was about a 20% response, which I think is a good thing. But the number of unresponsive responses, i.e. did not answer or preferred not to answer, seems to require a bit more nuanced questioning. And having a low number of respondents, i.e. only 2, for accessibility, for example, would seem to require a bit more engagement with people who are residents who have accessibility issues. Our building, for example, is approximately 50% people with handicaps, which is consistent to the residents in all of the buildings. Slightly over 51% have either one or more disabilities. And Language is also an issue. So are we actually gathering the information from the right segments to get a more complete view of who it is that we need to be serving?
Mhm.
Brian,
Yeah.
I see your
So,
hand is up.
oh,
Do you want
go
to,
ahead.
Brian, do you
Yeah.
want to address that issue before we get into the Jared?
Yeah, just thank you. So through the chair, Jess, some of the questions that you're asking about, I know they relate more directly to the tenant experience survey and the results of the tenant experience survey. That is an input. It's another aspect of what we're looking at as we look to move forward on the future strategic direction. So it's definitely something we're looking at in terms of those results and how they can inform this piece of work. The actual report that Jared is presenting to us here is the engagement insights summary report from the consultation efforts. So it's not specific to the tenant experience survey. I just wanted to clarify that. He's going through a different report in the package here today, but I wanted to kind of clarify from your discussion that those are relevant points in the context of what TSHC needs to think about. And there were some areas of improvement from the survey as well that some of those kind of reflect into what we heard through this consultation effort as well. So I just wanted to clarify that, if that helps.
Okay, Jess, anything else?
No, thank you. I would like Jared to respond to the accessibility issue.
Yeah, so that in terms of the accessibility issue, that is something that came up throughout the consultation process, and the importance of ensuring that, whether it's units or areas within buildings, the reality is that tenants' needs are growing increasingly complex, and ensuring that accessibility is an important part of the way that services are delivered is something that we did hear very loud and clearly, and is what we would expect to be a big part of the implementation of the next strategic plan.
Yeah, I know Linda hand is up, but before I get to Linda, I have a number of questions. I was going to wait until the end, but the one on accessibility is interesting to me as well. I think I'd like a bit more of a granular focus on this. Are we talking about accessibility over and above what for example, the legislation requires? I mean, what specifically are we asking about here, so that we can have a better sense of our ability to deliver?
Yeah, and it's a good point. So it's a broad concept and will mean different things to different people. And so for some tenants, there was a very micro issue, but for example, just getting into their unit was a challenge. Reaching into appliances, or whether it's the oven or the fridge, and looking at ways in which, when items are being procured, that they can be provided in more accessible ways. And I think part of what we're thinking about as part of the strategic directions process is recognizing that in some cases buildings were designed a number of years ago, and there may not be things that can be done at
Yeah, sorry,
reasonable cost.
I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about the physical design of buildings. I think that issue is clear, and I think we have an obligation to make those buildings accessible. I mean, we don't have a choice. What I'm interested in is a better understanding of what our residents mean by this, because some of it might be within or outside our realm of influence or control. Because accessibility is an important consideration, and that term is used interchangeably, but it has very specific meaning. And I'm not worried about the buildings that were designed 50, 60 years ago. I think we have to, by legislation, ensure those buildings are accessible. So that's what I was getting at, is a better definition of what it is that we're talking about here as part of that accessibility issue.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess part of it has to do with the buildings, and part of it has to do with the elements within the buildings themselves,
Anyway, Linda,
within the
go ahead
units.
before I get
Yeah.
into my questions.
Yeah, and thank you to the chair, through the chair to the committee. Thank you for the presentation. So just to respond a little bit to the questions, I think that there's nothing that is terribly surprising in terms of the results, and probably, it would be good if we had more tenant engagement if that is an issue, Jess. But I think what I see is that the tenant priorities are forefront in what we need to be looking at. And I guess the thing that for me is that we need to be laser sharp on the aging at home. That this is coming up at most of our meetings in terms of an increasingly complex population, which is understanding when you're aging at home. That means, things change in a world where there are more resources, but sometimes a challenge to access resources. So I think that our work is going to be cut out in terms of really actually defining what our role, and that may be where the innovation comes in, in being more focused on the whole aging at home piece.
Yeah, thanks, Linda. And I noticed the innovation piece I was going to touch on as well, because I think there is a bit of this is my word, a bit of a disconnect between the innovation value and how that resonates with our residents or staff. And I think that's something that we need to sort of focus on and add some clarity to it, because that's something that the board has actually been trying to focus on now. And Tom would kind of attest to this as something that we've been trying to add a bit more of a sharper focus to see how we can continuously innovate how we provide services and what we provide to better enhance the experience of the people who we have the privilege of serving. So I think that one, as we go forward, is something that I think we should probably be sort of thinking about. And I'm just going to go through the list that I have, and then if there's some general response, that's fine. If not, we can sort of deal with some of this in the next session. And there also seems to be a need for us to perhaps put a sharper emphasis on some of what I call the softer side of values, the empathy, the consideration that staff or tenants have raised. That's not kind of the hardcore values that I think we're accustomed to. This is more of the softer side of things. The empathy, the compassion, the ability to relate to others, inclusion, all that sort of stuff, I think, came up based on the presentation. That seems to be of concern to, not concern, but seems to be an area that the respondents want us to focus on. The communication gap one, I think, and I know Brad, for example, Brad has very defined service level. I don't know, Tom, if the service levels are that well defined across the organization, but I was thinking that perhaps one area we need to kind of focus on, because if tenants don't know when to expect a response to queries that might come into the organization, perhaps we could make those service level a bit more transparent and perhaps focus more on what our capacity to deliver these things are, and perhaps put that on the website. And the final one had to do with the accessibility issue. But overall, as Linda said, I don't think there's any surprises, but there are a few things that perhaps need to be emphasized, and a few things that perhaps need to be sharpened up a bit to better reflect what our expectations are as a board, but perhaps more importantly, what our residents expect us to provide to them by way of service.
Mr. Chair, Jim Meeks has his hand raised.
Okay, and I see Just as well. So Jim, you go ahead, and then I will get Just in.
To the chair, to the board, and to Fareed's mention of being able to being required by law to upgrade the buildings. I live in one of those older buildings that has limited accessibility. We have a wheelchair ramp, but there's a lip at the door at the main entrance that would be a challenge to anyone in a wheelchair. And then there are 3 floors only, and they're all stairs because there's no need for an elevator in a 3-floor building, I don't think. So upgrading a building like mine would be very, very costly to make it completely accessible.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Jess?
Thank you. Through the chair to the board. I think what we're perhaps not discussing is the opportunity that TSHC has to be a leader in social housing. Having the mandate to provide housing for older people, this is perhaps unique in all the social housing in the province. And to advocate for replacement of existing units such as Jim's building with a more updated building that would be specifically designed for accessibility, similar to the PACE project out in Oakville, would be a wonderful way to show that the TSHC is leading the way to providing services for people who have accessibility needs. So I think that's an opportunity that we should examine as a group.
Yeah, that's a good point, Justin. Just to give you some comfort, that has been the focus of our conversation over the last number of years. And that's where I think the entrepreneurship piece came in. And I guess the CEO can attest to this, but we've constantly talked a bit about, given our mandate, this is our opportunity to showcase what we can do and lead this social housing niche, as it were. So that's a good reminder. And I think that's an important consideration for us as we move into looking at refreshing the strategic plan. But exactly that point is that we're unique in what we do, and perhaps it's an opportunity for us to lead the way. Tom, I don't know if you've got any, before we wrap up this one, I don't know if you've got any sort of closing comments you want to provide before we get into the closed session.
Yeah, I think thanks, Fareed, and through the chair to the board. I just want to say that I think this is what we're starting to hit on in this discussion is where we really need to dive into kind of more detail. And I think to Linda's comment about being laser focused, I think we have been in operation for 4 years now, and so what some of these matters that are kind of escalating up. I will use kind of accessibility as an example. I think as an organization, it will be very important to balance out aspects of accessibility. What does it mean to aging at home? And importantly is how does that happen within the context of our system, right? So when we are advocating for seniors and accessibility and other elements of seniors, we have to be careful where are our boundaries as well. There are retirement homes, there are long-term care homes, there are other elements of our system. And so I think, we are 4 years now and we see what some of these supports can do to help people age at home. But I think this next iteration of this plan we need to be defining more where our work is, and then also advocating and sharing that work with others so that it is beneficial to the overall system to understand what is possible within seniors community social housing aging in place, but being respectful of we also don't have the capacity to be a retirement home, to be long-term care. So it makes for really kind of, I think, a challenge for us in our strategic directions. But I think that's where more discussion needs to be held, and I think we can kind of wrap up this public session with what you've all said, and really appreciate the comments and thank Jarrett and his team.
Yeah, thanks, Tom, and then thanks, Jarrett. I mean, I think that was a good presentation, and thanks for the work that has been done so far. I think it does reflect, for the most part, what we've been hearing, and some of the improvements I think being suggested is quite timely. All right, so with that, I think we will move into our closed session. So I need a motion from someone to end our public session. Move to closed session. Motion to move into closed session under the TSHC bylaw 1-2021, section 14.19, subsection 1J and 1L. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? All right, moved by Linda, seconded by Just. All in favor? That is approved. Just so you know, if I name you, you have to leave the chamber. So anyway, that's an inside joke. All right, so Karen,